breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying the power thereof. Look at the colon, and the solution to the whole thing is what? From such turn away. Okay, these descriptions here, I want to let you in on what a couple of them mean. All of them are linked together. If you were to take a needle and a thread and go through every one of them, that common factor would be self at the center of every one of these things. Every one of these things is following what self wants, but let me give you a couple definitions that you may not be familiar with. You probably know what a truce breaker is. It's people that don't keep their word. Right? I don't know that there's ever been a time where, at least in our society, that our government has been stronger in not keeping their word. And governors across the country failing their constituents, and congressmen and senators, that scandals come out, and even within our own I'm just be straight out, the situation with Wilson very recently of yelling out, "You lie." Okay, he broke House laws. I do personally believe he should be disciplined for breaking House laws. However, here you've got a Senate who doesn't agree with the president vocally on national television. I point that out to say we live in a day of truce breaking, where people in the highest offices in the lands don't trust each other. Okay, this is where we live. This is the time we live in society. In the verse, false accusers. Okay, false accusers. That sounds a whole lot to me like people that accuse each other of things that aren't true. We live in a huge day of fraudulent lawsuit. Now, this is the whole healthcare debate, or half of it at least. Fraudulent healthcare, or fraudulent lawsuits, and why the whole state of Pennsylvania is on emergency because doctors are leaving the state. And they can't keep doctors in hospitals. Why? Because of false accusers. If I can make $1 million with a lawsuit, oh, my neck hurts all of a sudden. I'll do it. Incontinent. Okay, we use that word a little bit differently, but it means no self-control, and you can understand why we use it the other way. Incontinent, no self-control. And people have no self-control. You know what the number one, or I don't know if this is across the board, but I'm just going to throw this out. It was my privilege to be able to go to the morgue in Philadelphia because of the chief medical examining officer went to our church, our former church, and he said, "Come spend the morning with me." And there was also the fellow that was in charge of ballistics in Philadelphia went to our church. So I went. I spent the morning with them. And we went to the homicide meeting with the chief of police and all these guys where homicides were flashed up there. And yeah, okay. Tell me what was the number one reason for deaths in Philadelphia in the 2-week period, and it's often the number one reason. Do you think it was drugs? Do you think it was domestic violence? No, what it usually is in the state or the city of Philadelphia, it is road rage, where one man is carrying a pistol and another man cuts him off and he shoots him in his car. Okay, that's the number one death reason in Philadelphia in those 2 weeks, and it's often the number one reason. Why do I say that? We live in a heady and a foolhardy, the word heady there. We live in a time where it's not just incontinent self-control, but heady, rash, foolhardy things are done. This description is the society that we live in, and I don't say this to depress you tonight. Okay, go out into the gray rain and have a good night. No. I point it out to you because to realize that we live in a carnal society that is motivated by self, and the problem is we must not allow it to influence our families and ourself, especially what we're talking about tonight. And we need to identify some of the areas that this self-religion is influencing even the church, us. There's an old word for it, living for self. It's called secular humanism. Secular meaning no God. Humanism means I'm the most important thing, human. Okay? Secular humanism is what we live in, our society. I'm not giving you a philosophy talk tonight. I'm showing you that this thing that God warned us of is happening. The solution is at the end of the verses. From such what? Okay, turn away. The solution is for us to be separate, not as Mennonites, not as Amish, not as people who head for the hills and convents. We're certainly not going to buy an island and move there, all right? However, listen, we need to identify the areas that this is infiltrating us and the church, this self-religion. Identify it and turn away from it and divide ourselves from it. And it's not just an action kind of thing. It's ideas and philosophies that infiltrate us, trying to teach us that we are the center of everything. Tonight we want to identify some of these carnal, secular, humanistic, self things that want to motivate us, but we must not allow to influence or motivate us. And I want you to ask yourself, am I being influenced by these things? We're told in this passage that it would be our society in the last days, that they would all be bound by this control, this motivation of self. It's a religion where you are the idol, and you would be the one who would do whatever you would want to do here. It's not a random list of sin. These are all very self-centered kind of things. We're also told how to relate to this self-centeredness, to turn away. Now, I'm not talking tonight about giving up friendships. I'm talking about checking how our society is influencing us and turning away from it. It doesn't just mean that we ought to somehow go away, as I said, and be Mennonites and be separate or whatever. We need to recognize this influence all around us, and I as a pastor must warn you. And let's see some reasons, or let's see some ways that society is trying to influence us to live for ourselves. Okay, now let's stop a minute. Time out. I want you to understand the Bible teaches satanic agenda. All right? When I say society is trying to influence us, I don't think that people sit around at the Department of Education and figure out ways to make you worship yourself. I don't think people do that in government. I don't think that people generally do that in health care. But I do believe that those that are children of the devil are run by their father, just as we are run by our Father. And I believe that he carries out his agenda, and that his agenda in our society, as we looked at the passage, is that we would do things for ourselves. And we would be motivated, and we would worship ourselves, and we would become the idol of self, and humanism would reign, and God would be forgotten. So when I tell you about influence, I'm not talking about guys at the Department of Education. I'm talking trying to influence you to live for yourself, or our children to live for yourself. I'm talking about a real Satan that has an agenda to do everything he can do to make Americans forget God. And part of that, a big part of that, is if he can get control of our children. If he can cause our children to love themselves and forget God. I want to tell you what, I've got 5 children now, and it is a constant struggle to keep children not focusing on themselves, but to love God. It's a fight. It's a battle. I did some research about concerning this matter of our children, and I went to the Department of Education, the government website. It's noted up here tonight. The website, if you want to type in all that stuff, you can go to it. And I looked at articles in the Department of Education that were written by teachers and supervisors concerning the matter of teaching children in the public school system self-esteem. I'm not preaching against public school tonight. I'm just expressing to you that there is an agenda to cause children, the next generation, to live for self, to live for their selves. I want to read this article to you, and I want you to note that none of the articles today are the debate of whether we should teach self-esteem in the schools. That's a given. In fact, they believe that self-esteem is the very most important thing to make your young person successful. Forget God, forget good parents, forget the Bible, forget Sunday school, forget anything like that. You know, if the child believes in himself that he deserves it, he will succeed. Some of you may wonder why that's wrong, and that's exactly what I'm preaching about tonight, why we're being influenced. We must be Christ-centered and God-centered. The Bible teaches us to be servants. The Bible teaches us to hate self. The Bible teaches us that we should never serve ourselves. We should always serve others. We should lay ourselves down. We should become servants to God and others. The study was done, the article that I'm about to read is done with 10 students and 10 teachers, and this is the verdict of the article. And I want to read the article, and I want you to understand that self-esteem is a given, but look what it says. It says, The researcher met with